Hi, everyone. I'm Ari Goldstein, Senior Public Programs Producer at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust. Happy Purim, or a Freilichen Purim. If you've heard the ancient story of Purim before, you know that it carries echoes of 20th century history, with a group of innocent Jews facing the threat of extinction from an anti-Semitic king and his advisors. Purim, like the Holocaust, is ultimately a story of Jewish redemption. Our collection at the Museum of Jewish Heritage has more than 30,000 artifacts, including dozens of objects that highlight how Jews celebrated Purim before, during, and after the Holocaust. The objects are meaningful because of the symbolic connection between the stories of Purim and the Holocaust. And they're interesting because they provide a window into Jewish ritual observance and the ways that it has both evolved and stayed constant over time. As we celebrate Purim along with the National Yiddish Theater Folksbiene, I'll share with you a small selection of the Purim highlights in our collection. First, a few from before the war. This is a poster from Berlin, advertising a Purim party on March 12, 1927. The poster includes an illustration of a couple dancing, with the woman on the right dressed as a flapper and the man on the left as a Hasid. The event was held in the party room at the Berlin Zoo for the 25th anniversary of the Jewish National Fund, also known by its initials KKL, which you can see in the bottom of the poster, Karen Kayemet LeYisrael. The poster reflects a German Jewish community that was prosperous and assimilated before the Nazis came to power, with events like a Purim party held at an important civic gathering place. And here's a photo of two young Jews, Gertrude Hess and Eric Frank, wearing celebratory costumes at another Purim party in pre-war Germany. This one was in Frankfurt in 1930. Gertrude and Eric married 2 years after this photo was taken and had a child named Peter in 1935. Eric escaped Germany in September 1938, and Gertrude, along with their 3-year-old son Peter, followed suit 2 months later, just 1 week after Kristallnacht, eventually making it to New York. Peter donated this image to the museum's collection as an adult. This is a group of Jewish children, mostly girls, celebrating Purim in Slovakia in 1938. Elizabeth Crew Teitelbaum, who's standing in the back row near the center, was born on Purim in 1921, so this image was taken around her 17th birthday. Elizabeth survived the Holocaust and later donated this image to the museum. It became much more challenging and dangerous to celebrate Jewish holidays under Nazi rule, and in some cases it was impossible. But many people found ways to practice their faith amidst unimaginable circumstances, and when the war ended in 1945, they were once again able to do so publicly. Here's an invitation to a Purim party on March 6, 1947, in a displaced persons camp for Jewish children in Bavaria. The camp was run by the United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration under the direction of Andre Marx, a Jewish man who'd once been the chief cantor of Luxembourg and survived the war with his family in Switzerland. You can see his name at the bottom of this card. Many of the children in the camp had lost their parents during the Holocaust, so celebrating holidays like Purim was essential in creating some sense of normalcy, as well as instilling Jewish pride and joy in the orphaned kids. An age-old story about overcoming hateful anti-Semites must have felt deeply familiar for these kids. Here's an illustrated Purim pamphlet from 4 years later, published across the ocean by Barton's Candy. Barton's was founded by Stephen Klein, a Jewish chocolatier from Vienna who fled Nazism and emigrated to New York in 1938. His candies were kosher and Barton's shops were closed on the Sabbath and Jewish holidays. You can see scenes from the Purim story in cartoons in this pamphlet, as well as puzzles, masks, and a list of Barton's retail shops in the New York area. The pamphlets reflect the integration of traditional Purim observance with mainstream American fun and games, and it also illustrates the growing size and security of the American Jewish community after the war, especially in New York. Here's another American Jewish artifact, this one from a few years earlier. It's a postcard sent by a US Army soldier named Leon Harris in March 1944. Harris achieved the rank of technical sergeant and was stationed during the war in New Mexico, as well as Shamsher India, where he acted as a lay chaplain, organizing religious activities for other Jewish soldiers. This postcard, which was printed by the Jewish Welfare Board, contains a verse from the Megillah on the front that says, "For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred?" Here's an illustrated pamphlet about Purim from a very different context. This pamphlet was printed in 1974 by the Association of Russian Immigrants in Israel in cooperation with Israel's Ministry of Absorption. The pamphlet, printed in both Russian and Hebrew, was used to educate Jews who had escaped persecution in the Soviet Union and found refuge as well as Jewish identity in Israel. For these refugees, like the children who survived the Holocaust, the story of Purim had real-world parallels in their own lives. This is a grogger, or noisemaker, from the late 20th century. We don't know a lot about this particular grogger, but many of you watching may have ones just like this at home. Grogger means rattle in Yiddish, and these kinds of noisemakers have been used as part of Purim celebrations for centuries. Finally, here's an illustration from Arthur Szyk's holiday series. Szyk was a Polish Jew who escaped Europe and settled in New York in 1940. He became one of the nation's leading political artists during World War II, producing hundreds of anti-Nazi illustrations that appeared in magazines like Collier's and in multiple published compilations. Szyk was also known for his passion for Jewish heritage, and in 1948, after the war, he produced a holiday series that included this Purim illustration. In the image, you can see 3 generations of a Jewish family celebrating Purim together, with the grandfather reading the Megillah on the left, Purim spielers in costumes entertaining on the right, and wine and hamantaschen on the table. Among the people in this fictional scene are depictions of Szyk's mother, father, and other relatives. This richly illustrated image is a good note to end on as we transition to reading the Megillah. From a Polish Jew who created art in order to combat anti-Semitism and celebrate the vibrancy of Jewish tradition, this illustration reminds us of the Purim story and its enduring power across generations. Thank you for joining us, and a Freilichen Purim to all.